When you hear the word conservative, what comes to mind? You probably have a pretty clear picture. But what if I told you that being a conservative in Costa Rica means something almost completely different than it does in the United States? Well, let's dive in and find out.
So, before we get started, just take a second. What does that word conservative mean to you? Go ahead and lock in that definition in your head, because we're about to see just how flexible that term can be.
For a lot of us, especially here in the US, the word conservative probably brings up these three ideas, right? We think low taxes, a powerful military, and keeping government small. This is pretty much the standard American definition, and it's our baseline for this whole conversation.
Okay, but get this. In Costa Rica, conservatism looks totally different. Now, they do share some core values with American conservatives, but when you look at their actual policies on some huge issues, they're polar opposites. Let's dig into why that is.
So before we get to the really big, jaw-dropping differences, let's talk about where these two groups actually see eye to eye. There's more common ground than you might think. First up, when you look at social issues, conservatives in both the US and Costa Rica often land on the same page. They tend to hold pretty similar traditional views, especially on topics like abortion and same-sex marriage. And a huge driver behind that social alignment? Well, it's religion. For conservatives in both nations, Christian faith plays a really significant role in shaping their worldview, and of course, their political stances.
Another value they share is a really strong focus on the traditional family. You'll find that in both countries, conservatives tend to support policies they believe protect and promote that specific family unit.
Now, on the economic front, both groups are pretty critical of socialist policies and generally lean toward free market ideas. But, and this is a really big but, as we're about to see, their ideas about what that looks like in practice are worlds apart.
And finally, both groups share a really powerful sense of national pride. They often see themselves as the protectors of their country's unique cultural heritage.
Okay, let's recap. They're on the same page with social values, family, religion, basic economics, and patriotism. That's a lot. With a foundation that strong, you have to ask, how could they possibly end up in such different places? Well, the answer is all about their national priorities.
So let's start with Costa Rica, because its unique history has cooked up a version of conservatism that you might not recognize.
And boom, here it is, the single biggest difference. In Costa Rica, conservatives actually support their universal government-run healthcare system. It's a point of national pride. Meanwhile, in the US, conservatives are some of the strongest advocates for a private healthcare system. It's a complete 180. But believe me, the differences don't stop with healthcare. Costa Rican conservatives also push for strong environmental protections to support their massive ecotourism industry. There's no military focus in their politics because, well, they don't have a military. Gun rights aren't really a major political issue, and they're generally much more supportive of social safety nets like public education.
All right, now let's flip the coin and look at the American model. We'll see how its own unique context creates a totally different set of conservative priorities.
And the contrast here is just, wow. It's night and day, isn't it? American conservatives prioritize less government intervention in business, private healthcare, and a huge emphasis on military strength and high defense spending. Of course, gun rights, via the Second Amendment, are absolutely central, and they generally advocate for cutting back on large welfare programs. It's pretty much a mirror image of the Costa Rican model.
So, what gives? Why the enormous difference? The answer isn't just about ideology. It all comes down to history.
This year, right here, 1949, is the key that unlocks this whole puzzle. What on earth happened in that 1 year to send Costa Rica down such a radically different political path?
This is it. This is the moment. In 1949, after a short but bloody civil war, Costa Rica did something truly radical. They completely abolished their military and wrote that decision into their constitution. That single act fundamentally changed their national priorities forever. All the money that would have gone to defense was instead funneled into healthcare and education. The whole political conversation just shifted away from military strength, permanently.
You know, this quote just hits the nail on the head. A political label isn't some rigid, one-size-fits-all definition. It's a living idea that's shaped by a nation's own unique culture, its own history, and its own political realities.
So it leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? If a single word like conservative can mean such wildly different things depending on where you are, what other political labels might we be misunderstanding? It's definitely something we're thinking about. Thanks for joining me for this one.